Welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 62. Joining me tonight is the man that I turn to when it comes to all things comic books, superheroes, and other geek-related subject matter. He is the man behind the real bits and behind the panels, Mr. Richard Gray. Richard, I thank you very much for joining me once again on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Mac. Always a pleasure.
Before we get into our subject of today, which is the Fantastic Four, another fantastic thing happened recently in that Behind the Panels podcast, of which you and Dave McKay and Dave Longo put together. How long ago now has it been since you guys put that together now?
It was 150th episode, so that's about 4 years. We're mostly weekly, although we've gone, at various times with various things in our lives. We've gone monthly or fortnightly or taken breaks. But yeah, so it's been about 4 years that we've been doing that, and we're sort of on a little hiatus at the moment. We've ended volume 1, but we will definitely be back next year.
And so you guys did have the 150th episode celebration at Good Games in Hurstville. Tell me, how did it go? How was the turnout, and how was the episode? Because I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet.
Oh, look, it was fantastic. Well, we concentrated on Watchmen, both the comics, the prequel comics that came out later, quite controversially, and the film. So a lot of your listeners will be certainly familiar with the film that came out a couple of years ago. A lot of fun, something everyone had an opinion about, very strong opinions. But most people just turned up to send us off. We got some cosplayers. We had a wonderful cake there that was in the shape of the Watchmen smiley face, and it was just a really fun afternoon and day, and we all kind of played games into the night. So it was probably one of the most fun podcasts I've done.
Excellent. I can't wait to listen to it, and I urge all my listeners out there to listen to it too, especially if you like your superheroes and your comic book news and views. Speaking of which, Fantastic Four was released this past Thursday. It was released, I'm pretty sure, worldwide around the same time as well. There was rumours and rumblings that the film wasn't the best, but I don't think none of us expected it to be just as bad as it was. Richard, give me your thoughts on the movie.
Well, look, not many of them are good, man, I got to say. I think I've read your review as well, and I think we're very much on the same page with this one. Look, I was with all those naysayers at the start. I've never been a massive Fantastic Four fan of the characters. Never really got the appeal, to be honest, but, they're important in the Marvel Universe, so I've always, gone and seen the films, but wasn't looking forward to it. As the film got closer, it looked less and less promising, but I was trying to go in with an open mind. But this is a very, not only is it a poor adaptation, it's a poor film. It's very slow and then just sort of falls apart at the end. Yeah.
To me, you can really feel that tug of war between the director Josh Trank and what the studio 20th Century Fox wanted from the movie. It's a funny thing. I've been saying to people, it felt like about 45 minutes in that Josh Trank realized he was making a superhero movie, and that he had to throw costumes on these guys and get them to do something. Because just say if the film was about just 5 teenagers or like 20-somethings who came together and made a really cool interdimensional kind of machine, it could have been a passable film, I think. But what you put in the whole superhero aspect into it, it just all kind of falls apart, and there's a little playing around with timelines and such. It just didn't work for me. Performances I thought were okay. Miles Teller was I think had a bit of a awkward charm to him in his portrayal of Reed Richards, and I also liked Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. There was a lot of controversy in regards to that casting decision, but comic book films and controversy in regards to comic book decisions goes together quite a bit, and usually the performances speak for themselves. But I just felt the film was really flat. I just felt that it didn't feel like it had any stakes to it. I thought that every scene in the film felt like it was based in a bunker or in a lab, and there was no kind of relationship with the world that they were trying to save. So none of that really came across either. In the end, I just think it was just a really big, colossal missed opportunity to do something great with a classic comic book product.
Couldn't agree more. I think the last thing you said there about being a missed opportunity is probably how I feel about it. I mean, as I said, not the biggest Fantastic Four fan in the world, but they definitely deserved a better film. One of the things you mentioned there was Josh Trank's struggle with the studio, and I don't know if you saw this a couple of days ago. He tweeted out and then quickly deleted it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had assumed it was because Disney had seen a cut of Fantastic Four and said, well, we don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
But it may be the other side, flip side of the coin. It may be excessive studio interference, because this does really feel like a film that, you're right, just it sort of is devoid of personality, is devoid of any activity, and then, which is okay if it's not, a film based on established characters, but then to completely betray not only the origin of those characters, but then to do nothing with them once there's not even a scene where they're all playing around having fun with their powers.
Yeah.
It's just joyless, know?
Yeah. And there's the scene in it when they get their powers, it's kind of expected that they will freak out of it, and they showed that, but I think they stuck to that point a little too long, and then there's this really weird thing, I might put a little spoiler alert now, where it crosses over to a year later.
Yes.
And then you see, Johnny Storm flaming on and doing his thing, and the thing, I don't know, I think he's being used as some type of weapon by the military, so he's going after tanks repeatedly.
He's a bit hulky at that point.
Yeah, and by that point, it just didn't work for me at all in regard.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
It became something else. It became something else entirely.
So, you and I are in agreement, pretty much the whole critical community in regards to the film, and it looks like audiences have responded to that. Originally, the film was projected to make maybe $40 million in opening weekend. I think it's hardly going to go over 11, which will have it in competition with Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation in regards to getting that #1 spot. Considering the poor reaction that the film has got, both critically and both from box office receipts, what do you think 20th Century Fox will do with the property now? Would they let go of it and let it revert back to Marvel, or do you think they'll try again in a few years' time?
It's hard to say. I mean, they announced a few years ago the sequel, but there's no guarantee that they're going to go ahead with that. One of the things that I thought was interesting and maybe indicative of their plans is that there was going to be a 3D conversion of the film, and at the last minute they decided to not even do that. So from a casual observer, it looks as though Fox is not wanting to spend any more money on this franchise than they have to.
Yeah.
I think from all indications, even though Bryan Singer, who's the sort of director and helmer of the X-Men franchise at the moment, has sort of indicated, that there might be crossover potential for the Fantastic Four, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be wanting to throw good money after bad.
Yeah.
At this point, as for returning to Marvel, well, it's hard to say. I mean, Rise of the Silver Surfer didn't revert the rights back to Marvel, and that alone should have been, the several years it's been since they did anything with that property after that. I mean, it's been a while since that film.
Yeah.
So, look, my understanding is that in order for Fox to retain those rights, they have to be either doing something active with the property, and that includes just having a film in production. So perhaps, them just having Fantastic Four 2 on the production schedule is enough for them to hold on to the rights at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think what we'd like to see is them, at the very least, come to a deal the same way that Sony did with Disney, and so they can at least use some of those characters in their own films, because it's not the Fantastic Four that Fox own the rights to, it's all of those characters. It's Galactus, it's the Silver Surfer, all those great villains that you want to see go and play in the Marvel Universe.
Definitely. Regards to that crossover, at Comic-Con there was that huge kind of picture taken of both casts from X-Men, Apocalypse and Fantastic Four together, and there was that rumblings about that crossover kind of film happening. Like you said, I definitely don't see it happening now either. However, if you were to try to salvage anything that was going on here, would perhaps putting the Fantastic Four cast as it is now alongside the X-Men series, which has just gone from strength to strength, would maybe rubbing off some of that magic X-Men stuff onto the Fantastic Four property might do something in regards to salvaging the franchise?
I mean, it could definitely work. I mean, it certainly works for the Hulk. The Hulk was kind of much reviled within, even within the Marvel universe, the Disney Marvel, or the formerly Paramount Marvel Studios universe. Hulk was still seen as kind of the green-skinned stepchild of the family, but Mark Ruffalo takes on the role in the Avengers, and suddenly he's hot property again. So maybe just being Marvel adjacent or being X-Men adjacent will give them that little bit of boost of legitimacy that they need. I think the universes could sit along each right, but Josh Trank's film is so dark, and the tone of that film is so incredibly joyless. And you look at the early shots that have come out of the next X-Men film, and it's the bright neon 80s.
Yeah.
So at the moment, that franchise is sitting in the 80s, so it's going to be hard to marry those two franchises together, particularly when all the flashbacks in Fantastic Four were to the deep dark ages of 2007.
Very true. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe after Hugh Jackman does his last Wolverine movie, which he says will be his last one, maybe they'll just reboot everything, and maybe they do like what they're doing now, Batman and Superman, having everyone whole new characters, whole new actors, whole new direction for everything, and like launch it that way. Who knows?
I suspect they will do that. I don't think Fox will be wanting to let go of X-Men anytime soon. No. They're still planning to do a TV series, is my understanding. So, as a fan, I'd love to see what Marvel Studios can do with the Fantastic Four franchise, because Fox has had 3 bites of the cherry now, and I don't think any of them have been perfect. No,
neither do I. Let's talk a bit about Josh Trank in regards to his career. Now, of course, the movie stars like Miles Teller and Kate Mara, Jamie Bell, Michael B. Jordan, but their careers are fine. They're going to rebound from this. Every actor has flops. It happens. Even the greats have them. They're going to rebound. Josh Trank, on the other hand, this is his second film. The first film, Chronicle, was received well. And I was very excited when I heard that he was going to do Fantastic Four, because I saw some kind of comparisons in regards to the Chronicle kind of thing and what he could do with Fantastic Four. But clearly now, it's clear that it just didn't work out. What should Trank do now to try to get his career back on track?
I think, he's sort of what he's indicated he's going to do will be, the wisest course of action for him, which is doing something a bit more personal, doing something a bit more, a much smaller film to sort of gain, to remind people why he was such hot property in the first place. I mean, Chronicle is not a wholly original film, but it was certainly innovative, and it certainly, it was an enjoyable film. There's a lot of fun in that film too, and it was a different kind of superhero movie, even though it wasn't strictly a comic book franchise. So that's what people saw in him there, and then he's already said in regard to the Star Wars project, he's walked away from that because he doesn't want to deal with big studio stuff anymore. He wants to do something smaller. So, look, in my mind, Josh, if you're listening, I think you should do something that's much smaller. But according to his Internet Movie Database profile, the next thing he's got coming up is the Red Star,
right? Which
is something about former Soviet soldiers, and apparently it is based on a comic book as well. So. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe a comic book property, but maybe something not so big and not so grand as Fantastic Four.
Yeah, absolutely. Something maybe a little bit closer to home for him.
Yeah. Let's just talk about some other different characters within that Marvel universe, which 20th Century Fox have got the rights to. One of them is the Gambit movie, the Cajun Mutant, which was played by Taylor Kitsch in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Channing Tatum is now signed on for the role. There was an interesting thing that happened a couple of weeks ago where a rumor hit the internet. I don't remember who originally put out the report for it, but the rumor was that Tatum bailed on the film in the last minute, and that 20th Century Fox was scrambling to find a replacement. Of course, after much hoorah on Twitter in regards to it, Tatum just ended up signing on the dotted line. The film's going ahead. What does this whole scenario say about Twitter in regards to any type of superhero news that comes out? People just go crazy all over it and just preach it as gospel, only to find out, like maybe a week later, that it's all just a rumor and nothing else.
There was a great story we found a couple of months ago in my podcast Fellow for it. Very subtle plug there. But we actually found a story about, it was a podcast who was sick of those kind of internet rumors where someone would actually come along and say, so-and-so has been cast as X, or, such and such a person is directing X, with no, the sources tell us, inside sources tell us there's no supporting evidence whatsoever. And then suddenly every website picks it up, and all their entire basis for for it is, the rap reports that, Deadline says that, and and the source becomes the source becomes the source, and everyone's just so desperate for news, it gets repeated ad nauseum. So this podcast actually decided to start a rumor. They said that Joss Whedon was directing one of the Star Wars films, and they actually say in the podcast, they don't actually say anywhere. It's the podcast was called Get Your Geek On, and nowhere in the podcast do they actually say that Joss Whedon is actually directing a Star Wars film. They said, let's start a rumor that Joss Whedon is directing a Star Wars film. Sure enough, the next day, another source picked it up and said Joss Whedon is directing a Star Wars film. And suddenly, for a couple of days, there was an internet flurry around the fact that Joss Whedon would be directing the episode 9 of Star Wars.
Oh my god!
And that is exactly what happens on the internet, and that's what happened with Gambit, I think, as well. But I think, given that Channing Tatum hadn't signed on the dotted line at that stage, there's always the cynic in me that thinks, well, maybe it was a rumor perpetuated by Channing's own press people to get him a little bit more money before he signed on that dotted line.
So maybe put out there that he might leave the project and have people go batshit.
No, bring him back.
Exactly. And so he could say, well, look, people aren't going to watch this movie without me, so you better give me those extra dollars. Okay.
Exactly.
Maybe a negotiating tactic. Okay. Well, it's very interesting in regards to the reporting of those things. It's always find it funny whenever you see like the headlines. It's always like Channing Tatum is leaving Gambit. It's like a question mark at the end. Like the question mark in like gives them a little bit of a kind of like a get out of jail free card. So in case people do bring him up on the validity of their reporting, they can say, well, I'll put a question mark at the end there.
My favourite one is that official.
Yeah.
Colon, and there's still a question mark at the end. Exactly. Or official. It's been reported that. That seems to be the extent of the research on stories. The old journalistic adage, isn't it? Have two sources before you report it.
Very true. Very true. And but unfortunately, we're just living those the times now where you have to be first to try to get things out there. And sometimes, well, a lot of the times, that can really hurt a publication in regards to credibility. Finally, let's just talk about something else that was released and that is official and it is going ahead, and that's the Deadpool movie. So 20th Century Fox released 2 trailers. There was a green band trailer and a red band not safe for work trailer. I want to talk more about the latter trailer. What was your reaction to it? And will this finally be the Deadpool movie that fans have been waiting for?
Oh, look, I think so. And I think, from the trailer, from all the publicity, you'll probably remember there was that thing that Ryan Reynolds did direct to camera where he was talking about the previous Deadpool incarnation he did in the much reviled X-Men Wolverine Origins, where he's, the merc with a mouth had his mouth sewn shut.
Yeah.
And he's quite happy to talk about that and trash talk that film now. That film is happy to do it. The trailer even has a go at Reynolds' own spotty career with superhero films by saying, I don't want my superhero costume to be green or animated.
Yes.
Referring, of course, to Green Lantern.
Yes.
Look, I've watched the trailer with people who have no interest in the character at all and think it looks like a lot of fun. I think it's a sharp, funny, adult superhero film, probably certainly for the Family Guy generation who are kind of used to something a bit more self-referential, who may be sick of the heightened operatic stuff that's in superhero films, and maybe want something that doesn't take itself so seriously but is still a kick-ass film either way. And I think looking at that trailer, I'm sort of only partly familiar with the Deadpool character, but it looks pretty damn fun, man.
Yeah. If anything, it will give a different type of degree of compared to the other kind of superhero movies, something a little more adult. It's definitely going to be. It looks like rated R, or in our case in Australia, MA. Lots of violence, lots of swearing. I think it's something. Look, could be something in the vein of the Kick-Ass movies. Would you call that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good comparison because they're pretty self-referential as well, and certainly the levels of violent comedy or comedic violence, whichever way you want to look at it at, definitely present in that. And just the pop cultural references and all those kind of things that were all throughout the trailer.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to look at that trailer and dismiss it. Like it or hate it, it looks like it's something worth paying attention attention to.
It definitely does, and I do hope that finally Ryan Reynolds does finally get that superhero movie which can suit his style and what he wants to bring. Because look, he's played several different characters now. In Blade Trinity, he was the Hand of the King, and then he did Green Lantern, and then he played Deadpool in X-Men Origins, like you mentioned before. So it's going to have to happen eventually that one of these films are going to have to break through and do something more positive for his career than the previous ones have.
Yeah, and like he is on record as being a huge comics fan, and that's why he keeps saying yes to these projects, regardless of their quality. So hopefully this is the one where he's finally turned around and said, look, I'll do it, but let's just do it right.
In that case, what we've taken so far is Deadpool has potential to be good, Fantastic Four lived up to his potential of being bad. And Richard Gray, I thank you very much for joining me today. Where can people read and hear you?
You can still find me at behindthepanels.net. That podcast is sort of going monthly for a couple of live shows at the moment. You can find our next live show at Oz Comic Con in Sydney on the Sunday the 27th of September. So people who are interested in our show, come and join us out there for that. Otherwise, we're monthly at Good Games Festival. And you can find my other podcast Pillow Fort, on podcastpillowfort.com. Or just go to geekactually.com where you'll find all the podcasts that we do.
And I thank you very much once again for joining me. My name is Matthew Pejkovic. You can find me at Matt's Movie Rev. That's been Richard Gray. You can find him at DVD Bits. And Richard, I'll see you at the movies.
See you then.
Bye.